Welcome back to New Day. We begin with new controversy over Florida's Stand Your Ground law. A man is accused of killing 2 people and wounding a third at a Labor Day barbecue. You can hear the gunshots in this video. Police call it an ambush, but his lawyers say Stand Your Ground and the Bush Doctrine are on his side. So what's going on here? CNN's Pamela Brown is joining us now for more on this. What do you want to
It's a little bit shocking for some people to hear that this is a defense in this case. The suspect says that he preemptively killed his neighbors because he feared for his life. The shooting took place 1 year ago, but this week his lawyers filed a motion that all charges be dropped under Florida's Stand Your Ground law. And that's not all. His legal counsel also cites the Bush Doctrine, which was used as justification for the preemptive war in Iraq.
Preyed upon, harassed, and tormented. That's the justification combat veteran William Woodward gave for opening fire on his neighbors, killing 2 of them during a Labor Day barbecue last year, according to his lawyers. Counsel for the Florida man filed a new motion this week to have all the charges dropped, arguing Florida's Stand Your Ground law as a defense.
When you're facing imminent violence, you're allowed to act.
In this 2012 surveillance video, you can see Woodward sneaking up on his neighbors, firing 31 rounds, according to reports. Woodward killed 2 men. A third man was hit 11 times, but survived. Woodward told police he felt like he was living in a war zone.
See, we've been tormented for last month by these people. They've just made our life a living hell.
His lawyer says Woodward sought the help of law enforcement who did nothing, and that he endured months of death threats, including threats to sodomize and gang rape his then 12-year-old daughter.
When people engage in this type of behavior, they can hardly be surprised if someone takes them seriously.
The controversial Stand Your Ground law was first brought to national attention in the high-profile Florida case of George Zimmerman, acquitted for killing Trayvon Martin. Although the law was not argued during Zimmerman's trial, Woodward's lawyers intend to argue not only Stand Your Ground, but also that the shooting was justified under the same principles that justify President Bush's preemptive war with Iraq, citing the Bush Doctrine.
If you apply that definition of imminent danger to Mr. Woodward's situation, then it's clear that he was facing imminent danger at the time that he acted.
Woodward is charged with first-degree murder and the attempted murder of the man who was shot 11 times and survived. The big issue here, what constitutes imminent threat? Chris?
All right, Pamela, and this Bush Doctrine really throws us a curveball. So let's bring in CNN's newest legal analyst, Mark O'Mara. Mark is a criminal defense attorney, of course, in the state of Florida. Familiar with you. He knows the Stand Your Ground law, and also we remember him from the Zimmerman trial most recently. Mark, welcome to the team.
Thanks very much.
Great to have you.
Great to be here.
All right, so Stand Your Ground.
Yes.
This part we understand. General definition, no need to retreat before using deadly force. Can even strike first to preempt or protect against imminent death.
Correct.
Does this case size up?
Well, first of all, one thing we learned is we have to know all the facts before we decide. But knowing what we know now, it doesn't really seem to match at all, because you can't actually put yourself in a situation where you then have to use the deadly force and say, I'm in reasonable fear. The imminent reasonable fear has to occur not by your own doing.
So it has to be a situation, and if it is of your own doing, then the analysis changes how?
Well, because you can't get the benefit of the statute. You can't put yourself in danger intentionally and then say, I want to use the Stand Your Ground or any self-defense statute to give yourself a defense. It just doesn't apply.
And then it just becomes that in that final moment of crisis where you're going to die or not, and that doesn't apply here because nothing ever happened.
Well, it's exactly true. I mean, he can't say, I thought I was in reasonable fear, so I went after somebody, when he had so many other alternatives. Literally leave, literally call the cops, anything like that. You can't walk into somebody's backyard and say, I heard they may get to me, and then act out.
So the way it works in Florida, you're supposed to have a hearing before a trial to see if there will be one, because Stand Your Ground obviously would excuse the act. You don't think if they go to that hearing, they get the protection?
Well, the hearing is there to say if you truly acted reasonably, then you shouldn't have to face a jury. A judge can look at it and say, you've acted reasonably, your fear was reasonable, and the threat was imminent, so you don't need to go to trial. And that's really a good idea to have, and I like the idea of having a pre-trial hearing because we don't need to waste time on the jury. So in this case, if they somehow are able to convince this judge the fear was reasonable and imminent, then they'll be let go. My thought is, with the facts of this case, I don't even know what the Bush Doctrine is, by the way, in criminal law, but this case doesn't apply.
Now, the Bush Doctrine raises suspicion because it seems as though they're throwing things up against the wall, and it somewhat weakens the proposition, doesn't it?
It might be a good soundbite to say that I acted preemptively because I thought I was going to be attacked, which is the Bush Doctrine, according to the defense attorneys.
But it's the Bush Doctrine of politics. We're using the word doctrine loosely. This doesn't exist in the law.
It doesn't exist, doesn't apply, and I think they need to be really careful sort of diluting what they're going to try and argue by throwing out a nice soundbite.
And now to clarify a point that has it has bothered all through the George Zimmerman situation. Was the George Zimmerman trial a stand your ground trial?
Absolutely not.
Was that the basis for the acquittal in that case?
Absolutely not.
Then why do so many people think that that's all it was about?
Because they misinterpreted the statute. And what really happened was way in the beginning, someone called it a stand your ground law or case, and it never changed. That's why way in the beginning I said it's not a stand your ground case. This is traditional self-defense. Stand your ground only, those words should only be used at the far end of the self-defense spectrum when you have an opportunity to retreat and the law says you don't have to. In the Zimmerman case, he never had an opportunity to retreat. It was never stand your ground.
And this isn't just about your opinion. This is the fact it wasn't a stand your ground case. It wasn't argued. It wasn't the basis for the decision of the jury.
It wasn't argued by the state. It wasn't argued by the defense. And though it exists, those words exist in the jury instruction because they have to, it was never even talked about in closing arguments.
Okay, important clarification. Now, staying with Zimmerman, we hear about the divorce. There have been rumors about this. Shelley herself seemed to be suggesting it when she was interviewed. What do you know?
Well, it's a private matter that I think should stay private. You know, it's sad that the situation that existed for 16 months of them being in the public eye has now caused another, destruction of a relationship like that. We know there's been so much damage caused to the whole family. I really hope that they can work through it in private the way that most people can handle their divorces.
You talk about in private, the idea of whether that's an option anymore for George Zimmerman. The word of arrests. To you, is this about being in the spotlight, or is there any cause for concern about his behavior? He's been stopped for speeding a couple of times now.
Well, he has. I mean, I speed as well. If I had gone through what George Zimmerman had gone through the past 16 months, I would be able to explain away almost any of my behavior. A couple of speeding tickets I don't think should concern anybody very much. It would be nice that he can move on in his life in some form or fashion. I don't think that'll ever happen. And quite honestly, I feel very bad for him for what he's gone through. I can't imagine living in fear and in hiding for 16 months.
Well, thank you very much for the perspective. Sure. It's great to start you off here on New Day. But remember, now that you're on the team, you can't give me that look anymore that shows how dumb my questions were.
No,
You're going to have to fake it now.
Great
you have to say it's a good question even when it isn't.
That's good.
Mark O'Mara, thank you very much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
All right, good seeing you.
Good luck here. Kate?